What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Dexter, Original Sin, why I think the show was a bad idea, narratively speaking, and the huge mistake the writers just made in the 7th episode of the series. And just so you guys know, this video will contain spoilers, so if for some reason you haven't gotten around to watching this show yet, and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time, let's get into it. Dexter Original Sin is a crime drama mystery television series created by Clyde Phillips. Following on from Dexter New Blood, the series' frame story sees serial killer of killers Dexter Morgan thinking back on his youth, which takes place 15 years before the first season of Dexter while on his deathbed. The series stars Patrick Gibson, Christian Slater, Molly Brown, Christina Milian, James Martinez, Alex Shimizu, Reno Wilson, Patrick Dempsey, and Michael C. Hall as the inner voice of Dexter. Now, the series premiered on December 13th of 2024 on Paramount Plus with Showtime. Now, at the time of the making of this video, the series has a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, with its popcorn meter currently sitting at 74%. The series has a Metascore of 50 on Metacritic based on just 6 critic reviews, with a user score of 6.5 based on 65 user ratings. And finally, it has an 8.3 out of 10 on IMDb with almost 13,000 ratings. So look, guys, I've always said that prequels are tricky because off the bat, you're attempting to tell a story in anachronistic order, and that can prove difficult in and of itself. Now, add to that an 11-year gap in the story, as exists in this case, and you're asking for narrative trouble. You have to keep continuity in order to satisfy the real fans of the original series, especially now that old shows can be easily accessed through cable on demand and streaming services. You also have to contend with the mythology of sometimes iconic characters, which can be equally as difficult. Here, the show creates a plethora of issues, especially given the fact that the original show made use of flashbacks to a younger Dexter figuring out how to become the notorious serial killer we see him as in the present storyline of the first show. Something that now the Original Sin is attempting to do all over again, adding much more context as it goes. Now, this will undoubtedly have an effect on the way that we see the heavily featured characters that appeared in the original show. For example, the more we see of Harry and Deborah change, how we view them. Harry and his wife had a son. And that son died because Harry wasn't paying attention to him. Bad parenting. We also see the depth of his disinterest in properly parenting Deborah after his wife died. More bad parenting. And finally, we see just how both instrumental and crazily detached he appeared to be as it pertained to Dexter's ascension to becoming the most prolific serial killer in history. More bad parenting. Really bad parenting. And the cherry on top, we see a much more contextualized version of Harry's affair with Laura, Dexter's mom. And though we knew a lot of this from watching the original series, watching Harry's actions play out in much longer spurts fundamentally change how we feel about Harry as a husband, as a parent, and even as a cop. And that brings me to Deborah. If we are to accept this show's interpretation of the character, Deb is an absolute shit show as a teenager. Or was. She's doing hard drugs, she's dating whole grown-ass men, and a man that Harry knew about and did absolutely nothing to keep her from seeing. And that changes how you view Deb's moral compass as a cop in the original series. Minus her deciding to protect Dexter after finding out he was a serial killer. I guess we all understand why that particular decision was made. In fact, Deborah giving Dexter all those speeches about responsibility ring extremely false now that we've seen all the nonsense that Deb got up to as a teenager. And though I know that in Original Sin she is just a teenager, but she's not into typical teenage shit. This is grown person, maybe even get charged as an adult type stuff. Things that would have kept her from becoming a cop in the first place kind of stuff. And I know some of you will claim that we already knew that Harry was a bad father to Deborah because she says so on many occasions in the original series. And in fact, we even see some flashbacks of it. And that it was probably because he had his hands full with Dexter. But in the new show, Harry seems super flippant about Dexter's extracurricular activities. I mean, he literally just sends Dexter out and goes, "Oh, you're going to kill somebody? True, curfew's at midnight." You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like no big deal. You know what I mean? In fact, I can make the argument that Harry's ghost did more to help Dexter in the original series than Harry does in real life in this series, which is kind of my point. And, throw on top of that the fact that in the original series, Harry was a uniform cop, not a detective when he found Dexter in the shipping container. Just saying. And also, they make it seem like in the original show that Harry didn't really know Dexter like that when he found him. And, I mean, in this series, Harry's babysitting him and everything. So, like, him and Dexter were already... Dexter called him dad, I think, in his last episode. He's like, "Oh, no, I'm not your dad." So that's how close he was with Dexter and therefore Brian. So it's, I don't know. It just, continuity, weird. Now, the big mistake of episode 7, in my mind, is that if you've seen this episode already, then you know that the killer that Miami Metro has been chasing this whole time is none other than Captain Spencer. And don't get me started on this dude kidnapping and hacking out parts of his own kid. That's just the wildest shit I've ever seen. But, I mean, all right. They try to make the excuse that, oh, well, him and his ex-wife are divorced, and that's why. I'm like, but that's wild. But the huge problem with this choice is that this would make Dexter not the first, and technically not even the second, but the third person to work in Miami Metro homicide that was either a serial killer or suspected of being one. And that makes what happened in the original show that much more far-fetched. I mean, how do you pull the same trick on the same cops with decades of experience? Think about it. Batista, LaGuerta, and Masuka were all in Miami Metro when Captain Spencer was there. And they were all in the original show as well. So, though we haven't gotten to the end of this season yet, I assume they get the bad guy by the season finale. So, they would have remembered dealing with the killer cop and therefore should have been much more able to detect Dexter's bullshit, especially once they realized the Bay Harbor Butcher was in law enforcement. And this makes the officers at Miami Metro so bad at their jobs that it fundamentally changes how you view them too. But I digress. So look, as a writer, you have to understand that it's not always about what you write that helps shape how an audience views a character. It's also sometimes about what you don't write, the parts you leave to the audience's imagination, the questions you leave unanswered, right? That do the same thing. Sometimes when you try to come back and fill in the gaps, it does much more harm than good. It's kind of like how Amazon has completely ruined how we see Sauron by making the Rings of Power. He was kind of a scary dude in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. It was what we didn't see that made him kind of a larger-than-life figure. But after watching the series on Prime, though, I can admit he may still be powerful, I'll never look at Sauron with the same kind of vigor again, which ultimately, I believe, does damage to both the legacy of Tolkien and the legacy of LOTR as a whole. Now, I understand why Paramount and Showtime are trying to keep this whole Dexter party going. Really, I do. It's one of their most popular franchises, and they're obviously trying to get every bit of juice out of it that they can. But let's be real. They've already fucked this thing up twice now. Because the ending of the original show was booty, and so was the ending of New Blood. So I don't trust the writers with this show, or Dexter Resurrection, which will be along any minute here. And for the record, Dexter remembering how he got his start as a serial killer on his deathbed is maybe the silliest idea I could think of to try to integrate this show into the Dexter universe, if you will. Personally, I would have rather they just made this show a standalone than to do what they did here. I mean, this was really dumb. Almost like cartoon character dumb. But, okay. And it's made even sillier knowing all the while that Dexter isn't going to die from being shot by Harrison in New Blood. According to the very title of the show that will follow this one. I mean, Resurrection. Duh. And if the past is any indication, honestly, guys, I think we're in for an anxious watch the rest of the way here. And I don't mean that in a good way. But what do you guys think? Have you seen Dexter Original Sin yet? If you have, what do you think about the writers fabricating another cop murderer? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. You can also support the channel by leaving a super thanks. If you should be so inclined, I'd really appreciate it. Also, be sure to go and check out themadScreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all in the next video.